Welcome back to Your Legacy Radio. I'm your host, Scott Tanzel. I'm excited about an interview that I have coming up in this segment and the next segment with Katherine Lambert, who is the CEO for the Western Carolina Alzheimer's Association. And I want to get right into that interview. So, Ms. Lambert, it's great to have you on the show. I appreciate you taking out the time.
Well, thanks so much for the invitation. My pleasure.
Absolutely. You know, the thing that, and we've talked about this some, but you know, the biggest, and everyone has heard of dementia. Everyone's heard of Alzheimer's. But I've heard a lot about there's as far as a lack of education as to the support groups. I want to really dive into that. But do you see that even with the association being so large, it still seems like that a lot of individuals don't know how to really plug into it, or do you see that on your side of things as well?
Absolutely. I think part of it is just awareness of the disease and our comfort level about talking about the disease.
Yeah.
That might be some of the challenge. But absolutely, for folks that are living with the disease and those caring for those who are living with the disease, connecting them with those resources for support is so critical. But also for those who are not in that pipeline of living with the disease, just from an awareness perspective, what to be aware of in your own and your loved ones' lives, and those you might know who are facing this themselves, how you can best be a support. Those are all things that we're really focused on, at the same time running parallel, trying to figure out how to find an end to this terrible disease.
Absolutely. That's the key. I mean, that's the thing that everybody's pushing towards. It's such a horrible disease. And, you know, I talked about in the last segment, I talked about this a lot as far as the individuals that it affects, 5 million plus that it affects, but, millions and millions of individuals that it affects, not just affected by the disease, not just that have this disease, but also the caretakers and the families, and it just spreads out so far. When one person is affected, all of the others who are affected by this disease. And so the cure is around the corner, I'm sure, and I think everybody's praying that comes sooner than later. What is it within your path of life that led you into being the CEO for the Western Carolina Association?
Good fortune, I would say. This is a privilege to serve in this role every day. I actually started my career in the for-profit world, financial services, and I was an executive recruiter in that field as well. And through actually some volunteer work I was doing on the youth services side, I found my first nonprofit role almost 15 years ago. And then about a year and a half ago, this opportunity was presented, and it was very interesting. I have aging parents, and I had begun to shift some of my volunteer focus to the senior industry. And so it was a very unique time in my life as well when this opportunity came about, and I have never looked back. It has been a blessing for me over the past year and a half.
Wow, that's awesome. And I can tell you have so much passion for it. Within any position as you are in, there's stresses, and then there's things that you just couldn't believe came into your life as pleasures through the position. What are some of the things when you wake up in the morning, when you go to sleep at night, some of the stresses within your position as far as the organization, or things you'd like to see better, or things that could be affected in a different way if you had more of X? What are some of the stresses you experience?
I think the global stressor is knowing how many people, you mentioned the over 5 million right here in North Carolina. It's right around 170,000 individuals living with the disease. And as you so rightfully said, that is another 2 to 3 caregivers for each of those people who is very intimately impacted and significantly impacted by the disease. So I think some of it is knowing that even though the numbers of the people that we as a local chapter are serving, it's not enough. It's not keeping pace with the disease. So I think that is a stressor. We have phenomenal programs. We have great support groups across the country, but particularly in our half of the state of North Carolina, and yet it's a drop in the bucket for the number of individuals who are facing this disease. North Carolina has a good but a unique challenge, particularly with this disease. We are a growing state. We are also growing on the north end of the age spectrum, and the two greatest factors, they say, for Alzheimer's and dementia are A, if you have a brain, and B, if you're over a certain age. Those are the two single largest risk factors. We all can check box one off, and North Carolina is growing in that age bracket as well, so we will see a faster growth just simply because of the changing demographics in our community.
I learned something at the conference this past week, and that is that at the age of 80 and above, 1 out of 2 are affected by this disease. That's staggering. I mean, I did not realize that.
It is staggering. And I think the other piece that I've learned that I think all of us, until we've been through something either personally or seen it on a day-to-day basis through work or volunteer involvement, we tend to lump things into categories. Oh, this person has Alzheimer's, or this person has dementia, or another form of dementia. And the reality is, if you've met one person with Alzheimer's, you've met one person with Alzheimer's. Every situation is very different. It progresses differently. All of it progresses, but it progresses differently. People have different challenges, different needs. So there is no one-size-fits-all solution as our team of social workers and volunteers works with families to find the best path for them.
Right. And I'm sure when you think of something that's stressful, you also think of the positive, and there's so many positive things going on surrounding the association, and awareness is growing. It needs to grow more, and everybody's working towards that, but it is growing. What are some of the positive things you see within your position and within the association?
I'll get into some of the numbers in just a second, because they are exciting about where we're headed. But for me, the thing that was the most exciting was to see individuals who have lost their loved ones or who are in the latest stages. I was amazed at the resilience, the passion, the determination that those individuals have for not only helping those that are just entering into and are in the earlier stages of this disease, but for their passion in this fight to find a way to slow progression, provide treatment, and ultimately end the disease. I have never seen such an amazingly passionate group, very much a group that says, we've walked this road, we don't want anyone else to walk this road. So that has been the very pleasant surprise that I get to see every day in the folks particularly this time of year as we head into walk season, and they're all gearing up and doing fundraising and donning their purple and showing up on a Saturday in September and October in their community. Yeah. That is really exciting. On the more specific side, you're right. There's a lot of great excitement and awareness around where we're headed. On the negative side, this is the most expensive disease in America, and I think because of that, we spent two-thirds of the cost, $226 billion, is what it cost the government and Medicare and Medicaid in 2015 or this year for the costs associated with treating those with Alzheimer's. That's projected to grow to $1.1 trillion in 2050. Mm-hmm. So it's a very bipartisan issue because it's a very real financial cost and burden, not to mention the emotional burden for families as well. And so the government is getting very much behind it, particularly funding research. The U.S. government is number one in funding research for Alzheimer's, the Chinese government number 2, and then the Alzheimer's Association at a national level number 3. So there's a lot of increase in research funding happening. And in every other disease, when they have had significant increases in research funding, it's when they've had significant leaps in the research towards treatments and cures. So we are very hopeful that this funding increase will also lead to those same similar positive results that some of our peers and other voluntary health agencies have experienced.
Absolutely. And I've got a list of other things that I want to get into, and we'll get into that in the next segment. Real quick, though, if someone wants to donate of their time or finances to the Alzheimer's Association, how can they go about doing that? What's the easiest way for them to do that?
The two ways. One is to go to our website, which is alz.org/North Carolina, and there you will see a myriad of volunteer opportunities, a way to apply, and also ways to get engaged with your philanthropic support. Alternatively, we have a 24-hour helpline, so whether you are looking to volunteer, donate, or seek help yourself, 1-800-272-3900, and we can also connect volunteer opportunities and philanthropic opportunities that way.
Very good. And we'll give that out a couple more times for sure. Again, that number that you can call to donate of your time or your finances to the Alzheimer's Association, or if you need support, is 800-272-3900. So we've got a lot of the things to get into with Ms. Lambert, and we will do that in the next segment. I appreciate you for tuning in. You are listening to Your Legacy Radio. My name is Scott Tansel, right here on News Talk 1110 WBT and on WBT.com. Welcome back to Your Legacy Radio. We gave out a lot of different information in the last segment. We're going to dive right back into it in this segment with Katherine Lambert from the Western Carolina Alzheimer's Association. 170,000 individuals in North Carolina affected, and then that's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of individuals that are affected within those families, not just in North Carolina, but that spreads all across this great country of ours. So, I gave out the information as far as if you want to donate your time or donate finances to this great association that supports and cares for those affected by Alzheimer's. You can do that by going to alz.org/North Carolina, or you can call them directly at 800-272-3900. So I want to get right back into the interview here, and we talked about so much in the last segment. And you working with the individuals and families that are affected by Alzheimer's and dementia, and I want you to explain to the listeners, because I've had some confusion as far as dementia, Alzheimer's, what's the difference? That'll be my next question. But in you working with individuals who are affected by this disease, what are some of the most needed things by the individuals, if there is a needed? The most needed thing. What are some of the things that are needed by them?
I honestly think it depends on where every family or individual is in their journey. But one of the things we hear most often, and it's a big challenge for families, is around respite for the caregiver. Finding out ways for that individual, their loved one who's living with the disease, particularly in the later stages of the disease, where they need constant care and support around the clock, for that individual who is the caregiver, the primary caregiver, they also need to find time for themselves. One of my board members is caring for his wife, and he talks about, at the holidays in particular, he talks about it's important to do something for just himself during that holiday season. But respite, however it's defined for that family, is one of those big things for the caregivers to be able to take care of themselves that I think makes this disease very unique on the part of the caregiver.
Okay. All right, good. As far as answering that question that so many have, and I know there's a definite diagnosis, either dementia or Alzheimer's, but the association of it supports and cares for both. Is that correct?
That's correct. Dementia is kind of a very large umbrella, and then underneath that, this is my very simplistic definition, and then under that umbrella are different types of dementia, Alzheimer's being the most common. There are many others, Lewy body, frontotemporal, and the list goes on. Alzheimer's is the one that I think collectively we are probably the most familiar with in common vernacular.
Very good, very good. As far as working with individuals, and I did an interview this past week with David Schenck, who wrote The Forgetting, and I asked him the same question, because he's over the years, and it's been interesting to see how once individuals either are affected by, or they work with someone who is affected by, or work with a group that is affected by Alzheimer's, they tend to stay within the association, within the realm. They want to continue the progress as to getting a cure for the disease. And he talked about how, in working with these individuals, it's totally changed and affected his life in a positive way. How have you seen the effect on your life in being a part of this association?
It was more than I could have imagined on the positive front a year and a half ago when I stepped into this role. And I think what it is a very powerful, to be in the top 10 of, and it sounds like a positive thing, but to be in the top 10 of diseases, if you will, sixth leading cause of death, but to have no way to slow progression, no treatment, no cure. You could look at that very negatively, or you could look at that and say, what a tremendous opportunity we have to run as fast as we can, as quickly as we can to that. Otherwise, we are going to have a problem that overwhelms us from the care and support side. So we have to absolutely provide care, support, and education for where we are in today's world. But let's run as quickly as we can to that finish line to figure out how to delay onset, find a way to slow progression and/or ultimately a cure.
Absolutely. And, it's a sad thing, but it's a good thing that Washington's affected by numbers, and the numbers you gave out as far as $1.1 trillion dollars being spent on Alzheimer's in the future just for the care of the disease, that hopefully will trigger some activity, and I know it will trigger activity as far as them investing in helping to find a cure for Alzheimer's. What are some of the things within science right now that you see as a positive movement towards a cure for Alzheimer's?
The single biggest one being an investment of more dollars into the field for research. That alone will increase the pipeline of research that's coming out. The Alzheimer's Association International Conference was just held last month in Washington, D.C., so it was a very interesting place to have it. We were able to kind of combine the research findings and the public policy advocacy all in one big initiative. But there were some interesting findings that came out around, there were some studies that got a lot of press around women, and particularly women with a diagnosis progressing more quickly. That's certainly, carrying that genetic makeup as a female, that's scary, but it certainly is helping us get closer to understanding kind of the makeup of how things work. I think the one that got the most press was actually a previously failed drug trial that had, upon second look, some promising results with individuals who were in the very early stages of the disease, and they were going to go back and do an expanded trial around that group because their sample size wasn't large enough. So there is some promising and varied research coming through on everything from what might be good preventative health strategies for all of us around exercise and diet to things that might provide treatment. We're not there with a cure yet, but are certainly working towards that and baby steps to get there.
And there was a date given out at the conference, 2025. And I know it was given out in a way of just saying, you know what, this may not be the date we hit it, but if you don't have a goal, you can't shoot for something. So this is the date that we're giving out. What made the association kind of throw out that number? Was it simply just say, okay, we're going to set a date and we're going to push as hard as we possibly can to get there?
It was actually part of something bigger called the Alzheimer's Accountability Act that was enacted as part of the 2015 fiscal year omnibus appropriations bill. It's a mouthful. And it's not only around reaching the National Alzheimer's Plan of preventing and effectively treating Alzheimer's disease by 2025. There are some other kind of legs and arms to that around scientists at the NIH, National Institutes of Health, submitting an annual Alzheimer's research budget proposal directly to Congress, hopefully cutting through some of the red tape. So I think it was about looking at where our population is, what the reality is of this disease, and saying we have to be here by 2025. Otherwise, just from a numeric standpoint, it's devastating. Yeah. We all know, if you know one person with this disease, how emotionally devastating it is.
Right, absolutely. Interesting. That's and that's, you know, but again, if you don't set a goal, you don't have something to shoot for, and I think it's definitely doable. You know, you talked about some of the awareness growth and how that's spreading, and people are becoming more aware, and they're becoming more affected because more individuals are affected by the disease. What are some other things that we haven't mentioned that an individual can do to help spread awareness, or the association is doing to spread awareness?
Thank you. That's a great question. There are a couple of things. I hear a lot of, what can I do? I feel helpless. You know, how can I move forward? One of the things that was very interesting to me, of nationwide, of all the research studies, clinical trials that are going on, not all of them require a diagnosis of dementia, Alzheimer's, or related disease. In fact, roughly 30% of all the studies going on are looking for, quote-unquote, healthy brains. So one of the things I encourage folks to do is go in and sign up for Trial Match. It takes about 10 minutes to do. There is a link from our website to Trial Match. It is run by the association, and it is you answer some questions, and it sends you matches of trials, studies, some of which are online, some of which are far more in-depth medical, that you might be a match for, that you can choose to pursue or not to pursue. But again, science is going to be what gets us there, and so that is a small way that every individual can play a part in moving the science forward.
Very good. Very good. Well, listen, I really appreciate you being on the show with me today. I know you've got a packed day, so I'll let you get back to what you have on your daily plan. But I want to thank you for the time again. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. We appreciate the opportunity to talk about what we're working on.
Absolutely. Very good. We'll talk again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And if you want more information about the association, you can go to alz.org/North Carolina. You can also contact them directly at 800-272-3900. And I would say, as I said in the first segment of this show, reach out for support. Reach out for help. You do not have to face the disease on your own. There is support groups. There is massive support available for individuals who are affected by dementia, affected by Alzheimer's. We talked also about ALS, affected by any of these horrible diseases, cancer, and I know I'm not going to name every disease that's out there, and if you're affected by a disease that I'm not naming, reach out for support. Put it into a Google search and find the support within your area, because one thing that I've seen and being involved with Riverwell Solutions and working with these different organizations is the support is there and the support wants to assist you. The biggest thing that I hear from these different associations as to the support of individuals who are affected by a terminal illness is their biggest stressor in life is the fact that there are still individuals that do not know that they are available to help them. And that's why I try to promote and talk about and educate you, the listener, as to these different organizations, because you may say, I'm not affected by a terminal illness, but if you know someone that is, or my hope is, even if you don't know someone that is, this information will be in your mindset. You'll remember the Alzheimer's Association. You'll remember the ALS Association. You'll remember the cancer associations. You'll remember Riverwell Solutions, and you'll remember those organizations that are there to assist and help individuals that are affected by a terminal illness, so that at some point, if God forbid you are affected by a terminal illness, you'll remember those organizations are there to assist and help you in finding the funds, finding the access to care, finding the access to support that you need and your family needs. So it may just be a caretaker, maybe someone who's not even affected by the disease, but someone who's taking care of someone who is affected by the disease. Whatever it may be, the effect is there, whether you have the disease or you know someone that is going through a season of being affected by a terminal illness. Reach out for support, reach out for help. And Riverwell Solutions, as I've said many times before, can help you to find that support, also help you to identify assets you can turn into funds that you so desperately need for the disease that you're affected with and the battle that you're going through. So if you want more information about Riverwell Solutions and the help that they can give you, you can call them directly at 866-500-2922. That's 866-500-2922. 866-500-2922. You can also find more about what's called a living resource benefit, which is where you take your life insurance policy and create funds that you need from that policy that you can utilize now while you exist on this earth to fight whatever battle you're up against. If you want more information about a living resource benefit, you can go to livingresourcebenefit.com, or you can go to the Riverwealth website, which is riverwealthsolutions.com. So we'll be right back. I've got more to talk about with you as far as that interview and many, many other things that we'll go through. We'll be right back with more of Your Legacy Radio right after this.